How we doing, folks? Your host, Donnie Scholzhofer here with episode number 3 of the SCKL Slap Shot, your home of all SCKL news. Obviously, we got a great episode in store for you today. Another news segment. We really think you're going to enjoy this one. We're really branching out, and I love bringing you that to keep the excitement here as we're building up to the start of the SCKL season. But first things first, we're going to get into our first segment, which we're going to talk about the prospect draft. And it's the first thing that we're going to deal with is expansion. We did expand in this season. We've got 8 teams returning from last year. 2 new teams joined the league. And this was the first thing that they got to engage in was the prospect draft. Basically, we have 2 teams joining. We Dupuis, owned by owner JP, and then we'll have Boozin' with Bosma, owned by owner Tyler. And basically, they finally get to join. We have the prospect draft. We have every team has 4 farm slots. They get 3 picks every prospect draft. At the end of the season, they choose which guys they want to keep from season to season and then get to refill the remainder of their prospect spots with their picks in that draft. That's why you'll see eventually some of the picks were skipped. But basically, the worst team in the league last year was Tootin' in the Stall. It wasn't their team name at the time, but that was the worst team last year. JP's new team, We Dupuis, and then Boozin' with Bosma got the 3 top percentages in terms of the draft lottery to win the first round pick, and it ended up going to JP, the first pick in this year's prospect draft. All eligible players in the prospect draft are those guys who've been drafted by an NHL team, aren't already on a farm team or a regular club, and haven't played more than 9 NHL games, obviously. We do have the draft lottery video. If anybody wants to watch it, be sure to leave a comment, and we'll be able to post that for you. But as for the link at least. But basically, JP won the lottery, and that means he won the right to draft Connor McDavid. Our other expansion team, Boozin' with Bosma, kept losing his ratios and ended up with the 4th overall pick, meaning he got Mitch Marner of Toronto. Jack Eichel with the 2nd pick did go to Tootin' in the Stall, who did have the second best odds at winning the 1st overall pick. Geyser Geese went with Dylan Strome, 3rd overall. So a lot of similarities to the real draft. You can see a lot of teams had to pass as you moved into rounds 2 and 3 just because they already had their prospect picks filled up. We did have one redraft. Kasperi Kapanen, who was dropped from his farm team last year, was drafted by Chance of Fleury in the 2nd round, so a little bit of excitement there. But that's how the prospect draft shaped out this year. Next, though, into the expansion draft. This is the excitement that we're talking about. We Dupuis and Boozin' like Bosma did get to pick their keepers for this season. Obviously, the 8 teams remaining from last season had first dibs at keeping their keepers. A little bit redundant there, but keeping their players from last season. And then the expansion draft, anyone eligible was anyone who was not on a team last year or had been dropped from a team last year. Basically, first pick, we had a lottery between Boozin' with Bosma and JP, where JP did win it yet again to get the first pick or the next 2 picks. He chose to take the next 2 picks, meaning Boozin' with Bosma had the first pick in the SCKL expansion draft, and he took Patrick Sharp, who was formerly on Chance of Fleury's. He won a league title last season. Now he's on an expansion team, but that's honestly a great pick. He will be playing with Seguin and Jamie Benn. He's actually projected to be on a line with them, so that could end up being a steal of the draft. Guys like Duncan Keith, a lot of quality players did go in this draft. You see Brassard, O'Reilly, Okposo, really, really good quality players. You can see the 11th overall pick is where we saw our first goalie taken. They went in rapid succession. Ryan Miller then taken with Boozin' with Bosma. Just a very, very solid, depth group of players that did go out in that expansion draft. And it's allowed for these expansion teams to look very, very solid. And you can expect JP to have guys like McDavid on his roster as well going into the season. But we're going to look at We Dupuis first, give them a bit of an analysis like we did with the teams in the last episode. What they're really going to need: power play production at this moment in time. They have a few decent goal scorers, not a ton of guys, but they're going to need a lot of points on the power play to compete. They're going to need physicality. They have no hitters on their team right now. Strowman was their leading hitter last season with 104 hits. Definitely going to have to up the physical category if they want to win that at all season. Need some proven goaltenders. Right now, Pavlich, very, very up and down season with Winnipeg last year. He lost his starting job for a moment in time. Same with Brian Elliott, very up and down yet again. He's had injury struggles as well, so he's going to need to come out of the woodwork and have a very good season if We Dupuis does want to compete for a playoff spot. And the last thing they need, you need to see what Connor McDavid can do. He's honestly arguably the best player on their team already. So can he come in and make an impact in Season 1? Well, Season 1 for them, Season 2 for the league. That's really going to be the key for Wee Wee Dupuis. But now, moving on to boozing with Bosma. They need goal scorers. You take a look at this team. Their top goal scorer was Tyler Toffoli and Tyler Bozak with 23 goals. They need to find someone to put the puck in the back of that, or they're going to be losing that category week in and week out. Need to put the puck on net as well. It goes hand in hand with goal scoring, but not a lot of shooters on this team either. Only a couple of guys that broke the 200 shot barrier. So they need guys like Perron to step up and have big seasons, maybe find his way on the line with Sidney Crosby possibly could be the move that could allow them to jump up and give a chance in the season. Another thing, physicality. A little bit better off than Wee Wee Dupuis in this category, but not great. And they need to beat the Ryan Miller curse of averageness. He's never been a statistically fantastic goalie, but they're going to need him to be. They're going to need Talbot to replicate the season he had with the Rangers last year in Edmonton. It's going to be very tough with the defensive core he has in front of him, but they're going to need that if they want to have any luck in the goaltending categories. And now, a new segment for you. Crash the Crease is what we're going to be leading into. It's phenomenal. Can't wait for you to see it as we hear these words from our sponsors. Crash the Crease segment brought to you by Allstate. Better hands than Pavel Datsyuk means you're in good hands. Allstate. All right, and welcome to our Crash the Crease segment now, brought to you by Allstate. For when you crash, they'll be there. So we've got our league commissioner and the owner, GM, coach. He controls everything. Bend it like Backstrom. Troy here with us. Troy, thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you on the SCKL Slap Shot.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's phenomenal to have our first interview segment here on the show. And obviously, you were really the brainchild of the league. Obviously, you did a lot of the planning, came up with the rules for the most part, with some group consensus, but what have you. You really took over your GM in the league. How do you think the first season went? Any controversies, anything that went on? How smooth do you think the whole thing went over?
Yeah, so I was super excited that the league came together as quickly and as easily as it did. So to start off with, I had some ideas for owners I wanted to include that I thought would create a good, solid base for an in-depth league like this with keepers, farm team, draft trades, etc. And I think all those guys that I wanted to joined up for the most part. So I was happy with how the league came together. Overall, I was even more excited with how Season 1 went. We had a few bumps, obviously. It's nothing unexpected. There were a few rule discrepancies, some discussions, a few things that I, as commish, maybe hadn't foreseen or expected. But it was nothing that we, as a league, couldn't deal with. I think we handled everything really, really well. I try to be a pretty democratic commish, not like a monarch type. So we had some votes, as you said. We made some changes, and I think we really, really improved the league during Season 1 and during that first off season. Also, I want to point out how competitive the league was. I think the last playoff spots came down to that last week or the last night of the season. So we got some good parity going in the league for sure. We've also had a few owners who weren't maybe as active as we would have liked, but we moved on from them, and I am extremely excited to get Season 2 going.
Sure, we'll get on to that in just a second. But before we talk about that, you yourself had a very, very solid first season. Obviously, you won the league in the regular season. You didn't do as well as you would have liked in the playoffs. Fell a little bit short there. And, I mean, yours truly had to take the title. But as a GM, we talked about in that first episode with our By the Numbers segment, you were very active. You were one of the top traders. You obviously made the biggest trade when you gave up a lot of prospects to bring in Stamkos. You were active on the free agent wire. What's your real style as a GM? Are you proactive? Do you like to pick up guys before they get hot? Or do you just read somebody's had a couple of good games, let's get them into the team, ship somebody out that's doing poor? Are you reactive?
Yeah, so I think you got to have a good mix of both, being, like you said, proactive and reactive. I think you really have to understand a player's surroundings, which guys are in offensively conducive surroundings, who a guy's line mates are, his goalie, his offensive zone start percentages, even down to things like his relationship with his coach. If you got a guy like maybe in Evander Kane who is always in the doghouse with his coaches and stuff, maybe he's going to see a few less minutes per game than you'd expect. So there's so many factors to making a move, even as small as a free agent ad, because we've got limited moves per week and per season. So you really got to be smart. It's really a matter of weighting those factors correctly and even weeding out any unnecessary info. You also got to understand that every move you make isn't going to work out. Like, for example, I traded Natsom Kadri straight up for Valtteri Filppula last season. I thought Filppula, being in a high-powered Tampa Bay offense, playing in that top six with Stamkos, Tyler Johnson, Kucherov, I thought that would be sort of a production by association type of thing. Season ends and Filppula's got 12 goals. He's a -7, worse than Kadri, which who would have seen that with Kadri playing in Toronto? He's got 100 less shots on goals than Kadri, 100 less hits. So that trade didn't work out. Oh well, you move on. I dropped Filppula. You can't dwell on things that don't work, and you can't be afraid to take risks. I think the only way to make your team better is to try and make your team better. Like you mentioned, the Stamkos trade. I traded a ton of future there. Gave up 2 potential future franchise players, plus my first-round draft pick, plus a guy I think is the 4th-ranked prospect for this season in Nikolai Ehlers. The case. But again, the only way to improve your team is to try and improve your team, and that's kind of the motto I go by.
Fair enough. So definitely something that if you put a lot of work into it week in and week out, and you really got to weigh those positives and negatives as they go throughout the season. But last thing we're going to get into, you touched on it in the first question. The league's expanded this year. We've gone to 10 teams from 8 teams. Also, you got 2 new owners coming in there. Of course, we talked about getting rid of some, not as active owners as the league would have liked. So we've added another owner there in sort of a buyout deal, if you'd like to put it that way. So we've got 3 new owners coming into the season. How do you think they're going to incorporate themselves in? What do you think they're going to do? And just how excited are you for the start of season number 2?
Yeah. So expansion is something we looked at from early on last season. We knew an 8-team league was it was easier to manage. There's fewer teams to really spread the wealth, spread the talent around over. So we had, over the offseason, we came up with a few ideas of people we wanted to invite, and we ended up narrowing that list down and choosing Tyler Schultz and JP Nicola to become our expansion owners, and then we asked Yuli Adder to take over for one of the inactive owners that we replaced. So we chose these guys based on a few factors, mainly their hockey knowledge, their activity level, and their likability. All 3 of these guys have fantastic knowledge of the game. They're all good people, and we really trust that they'll all be active. So I'll touch on each one a bit, I guess. So we'll start off with Tyler Schultz. And what can you say about this kid? Schultz is Schultz. He's shady, he's a scumbag, but he knows hockey, and I think he's a good kid. He's also very close to our friend group, and we trust that he'll keep up and be an active manager because he knows what's coming if he doesn't. So to move on to JP Nicola, I respect the hell out of John Paul. I grew up playing soccer with him. He's always up for discussion about any sport. The kid's got bona fide hockey knowledge. As a Penguin season ticket holder, he really knows the game. And again, I'm sure he'll be one of our more active managers. And Yuli, again, I think he's a season ticket holder. Another kid who really knows the game. He's got a strong fantasy sports background too. From what I understand, he runs a fantasy football league, so he knows how this stuff works. The thing about Yuli, too, is that I think he's too proud of his sports knowledge to become inactive. I think the last thing that Yuli wants is to finish in the bottom, 2, 3, 4 teams, even if it means that he'd get a good draft pick for next season. So I think he really takes pride in his hockey knowledge, and we as a league are really ready for him to show us what he can do. Overall, I think we've got 3 fantastic new owners. I think we absolutely are improving the league by bringing these guys in. And I know I am extremely excited to see what all 3 of these guys can do, taking over teams and turning them into contenders.
And that's really what you want. You want guys that are going to be motivated, that's going to get the whole league competing. Nobody wants to be tanking and finishing last place every year. You want everybody fighting for a playoff spot, and hopefully we have that same kind of excitement here in Season 2. Well, Troy, thanks so much for coming on the program today. Really appreciate you taking the time out to join us here, and best of luck in the season. We know the draft's coming up, and we're really excited for that. So best of luck. Thanks for being on the program, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Whew, thank God that's over. Wait, we didn't go to commercial? Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's all the time we have for you on this episode of the SCKL Slap Shot. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you as we do a little bit of draft analysis. The Season 2 draft, very, very close. Thanks so much for tuning in. I've been your host, Donnie Scholzhofer. We'll see you guys in episode 4. Take care. Bye-bye.